I know being a student pilot is challenging, and it can be very difficult to figure out exactly what you need to know to pass your check ride. I'm extremely excited to start this series that's going to help you become a private pilot. We're going to cover everything that a private pilot will need to know in order to pass their practical test for both the oral exam and the flight exam. Each of these videos is going to provide you additional references as well as the definitional knowledge, and we're even going to apply our knowledge by answering some scenario-based questions that you could face when it's time to actually do your oral exam. So let's really drill down this knowledge and get started. Today we're covering Area 1 Task Alpha Knowledge 1, which is going to be certification requirements, recent flight experience, and record keeping. So for every lesson, I want to provide you with the references so that way you can have some study material to go back and look over as well. I've designed these to be very comprehensive, but I think it's always important that you check your CFI and where you're getting your information from. And if you're watching this at a later date, regulations may have changed. So it's going to be important to go back and check those regulations before sitting down for your check ride. Today's regulations are going to be 6183, 61103, 61105, 61107, 6156, 6157, and 6151. I'll leave a list of these down in the description below so you'll have them for future reference. Every DPE is going to operate a little bit differently. Now, I can't guarantee you the questions that you're going to be asked, and for the most part, you should be asked things on having a private pilot's license. However, you are a student pilot currently, and I think it's really important for you to understand the regulations that you should be operating under as well. Let's take a look at Regulation 6183. This is going to be the eligibility requirements for the student pilot. In order to get your certification, you're going to need to be at least 16 years old, be able to read, speak, write, and understand the English language. And your student pilot certificate can be issued by any of the following: an FAA inspector or technician, an FAA designated pilot examiner or a DPE, an airman certification representative, an ACR, associated with a pilot school, or a certified flight instructor, CFI. 61103 is the regulation that covers your eligibility to become a private pilot. To be eligible for your private pilot certificate, you'll need to be at least 17 years old, be able to read, speak, write, and understand English, and receive logbooks endorsements from an authorized instructor stating that you've completed the required aeronautical knowledge training in 61105. You'll also need to pass your FAA knowledge exam and complete the flight requirements that are outlined in 61107. Lastly, you'll get an endorsement from your instructor saying you're ready for your check ride. A couple of things you want to keep in mind before you go to your check ride: sit down with your CFI. Make sure that you meet the minimum flight experience requirements before trying to go to your check ride or practical test. Again, those requirements are all lined out in 61107. You'll also want to review your ACS, as that's going to tell you exactly what to expect when you go to your check ride. You'll also need to hold a valid medical certificate that is going to be appropriate for the certificate that you're seeking. That covers our certification requirements for both student pilots and private pilots. But this knowledge area specifically covers at least 3 different topics. The next one is going to be recent flight experience. This is going to be covered under 6156. In order to act as a pilot in command, or PIC, a pilot must have completed a flight review within the preceding 24 calendar months, consisting of a minimum of 1 hour of ground training and a minimum of 1 hour flight training. Now, those are just the minimums, so make sure you don't get stuck on the fact that it's only 1 hour of each of those. Again, that's a minimum requirement. There's one required topic that you have to cover, especially during the ground, and that's going to be operating and flight rules of Part 91. Now, this can be anything under Part 91, so it can be things like weather or airspaces. Any of the flight rules or operating procedures that are there, your CFI can test you on. This is especially important if you've been away for a while, as regulations are constantly changing. So it's really important for the CFI to make sure that they cover the changes that have happened since that pilot has kind of been away, or over the last 2 years since their last biannual flight review. You also need to do a review of the maneuvers and procedures as determined by the CFI. Those are usually going to be license appropriate. So if you only have a private pilot's license, you're not going to be asked to do commercial flight maneuvers. Now, there are a couple of exemptions where you can extend the time before you actually have to do a biannual flight review. So a pilot does not need to complete a flight review if they have passed a pilot proficiency check or a practical test, for a new certificate, rating, or operating privilege in the past 24 months. You're also exempt if you completed at least one phase of an FAA-sponsored pilot proficiency program or the WINGS program. This means once you get your private pilot's license, you have 24 months before you have to do a biannual review. But if in a year or a year and a half, you get your instrument rating, let's say, then now that clock resets on that BFR to another 24 calendar. The same can be said for completing a phase in the WINGS program. Along with 6156, we also want to review 6157. This is going to be the recent flight experience required for you to operate as the pilot in command. So to act as the PIC of an aircraft carrying passengers, a pilot must have within the preceding 90 days completed 3 takeoff and landings as the sole manipulator of the flight controls in the same category, class, and type, if a type rating is required. That means if you've done 3 takeoff and landings in a Cessna 172, you're still going to be current in a Piper Cherokee. It's important to note that this does separate single engine and multi-engine aircraft. So if you've only been flying a single engine or a multi-engine aircraft over the last 90 days, you will need to do 3 takeoff and landings in the other aircraft in order to be current for those. It's important to note if you're operating a tailwheel aircraft, your landings need to come to a complete stop. The same is said for your night currency. You're also required if you're flying at night, which is going to be 1 hour after sunset or 1 hour before sunrise, to make sure that those 3 landings are to a complete stop as well. So if you've got a tailwheel endorsement, if you did 3 takeoff and landings at night, then you would be fully current under all 3 of these provisions. So we've covered certification requirements and recent flight experience. Now let's talk about record keep. If you're finding value in this video, go ahead and smash that like button for me, as it'll help me help other student pilots just like yourself. 6151 is our logbook regulation. Each pilot must document the following in an FAA acceptable logbook: training and aeronautical experience to meet the requirements for the certificate, rating, and flight reviews, flight experience required for maintaining currency, and each entry must include the date, the total flight time, the aircraft type and identification number, the location of departure and arrival, the type of flight time, so was it solo, did you act as a PIC, was it flight training or simulator training, and also the flight conditions, so was it at day, was it at night, did you have any actual instrument conditions or simulated instrument conditions, or were you really hardcore and you used some night vision goggles? All of those need to be notated inside of the log. You do not have to have a official pilot's logbook from somebody. You can keep track of all of your experience on an Excel spreadsheet or just a simple notebook. As long as it has these items in it, you're good to go. Take note of line item A and B. So you don't have to log every single flight, only the ones that you want to use towards your currency or you're applying them towards a rating. Obviously, while you're doing flight training, you'll log everything. But once you complete your pilot's license, if that's all you're going for, then you only need to keep track of your flights for your currency as well as your biannual flight reviews. Let's do some scenario-based questions. If you still have questions about this knowledge area, leave them down in the comments below. I'd love to help you out. Feel free to pause the video and answer these questions yourself before I reveal the answers. Let's say you're 16 years old and you want to get a private pilot's license for a single-engine airplane. Can you get your private license now? Well, no, because you have to be 17 years old in order to get your private pilot certificate. Can you get your student certificate now? And yes, because you only need to be 16 years old in order to get your student pilot certificate. While you are 16, you can start working on all of your hours and everything you need to get, so on your 17th birthday, you can take that Checkride. Now, what if you've logged all of your flight hours, but haven't passed the knowledge test? Well, you wouldn't be eligible for the Checkride. You need both flight experience and a pass on your knowledge test before taking the practical exam or the Checkride. Imagine you last flew an airplane 4 months ago. You now want to take your family on a flight. Can you legally act as pilot in command or PIC? And of course the answer is no, because you haven't completed your 3 landings in the last 90 days. What if you did 3 landings last week, but they were in a Cessna 172, and now you're going to fly Piper Seminole? So a little helpful hint, the Cessna 172 is single engine, while Piper Seminole is a multi-engine aircraft. You need to do at least 3 takeoff and landings in that multi-engine aircraft before carrying passengers. Now imagine that you get your private pilot's license 2 years ago and you haven't flown since. Can you still act as a PIC today? Let's say that you got your private pilot certificate January 25th, 2023, and now it's February 1st of 2025. No, because you will need to have done that flight review every 24 months. Now those are 24 calendar months, which means if you get your license in August the 3rd, even if it's August 15th, 2 years later, technically you can still be PIC until August 31st of that year. But let's just say that you completed an instrument rating in the last year. Can you act as PIC now? Then you wouldn't need a BFR, as passing a practical test resets that 24 calendar month clock. Let's say you complete a night cross-country flight. What do you need to log? You'll need to log the date, the total flight time, your departure and arrival locations, the type of aircraft along with the tail number, that you soloed, you were the PIC, it was a cross-country time, and a night flight. Now personally, if I stop at any other airports, I always like to log those as well, but that's not a requirement. Now, why is logging flight time so important? It allows you to prove your experience for ratings, check rides, and to stay legal as a PIC. Congratulations on finishing your first step towards becoming a private pilot. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so that way you'll get the next lesson as soon as it drops. Speaking of next lessons, why don't you go ahead, click on the next lesson here, or you can check out the entire playlist located here. Thanks again for watching this video. Continue to study and work hard. Can't wait to see you up in the skies. And until next time, keep your grass off your wingtips.